right, everyone. Welcome to the Urban Gardener channel live stream. I'm Enoch. It's really great to be here with all of you. Happy New Year's, happy holidays. I hope you had a great holiday this year. And just wanted to get on here and do a little bit of a live stream with everybody here at the end of the year. Kind of have just a little bit of discussion about what we've had growing on this year on our channel, and maybe just a little bit about what we've got planned for this next year as well too. So again, really glad to see all of you here. And right off the bat, if you can, hit that like button if you're here, and if you're joining with us live, get into the live chat there and let me know that you're here. I'd love to hear from you all. If you got any questions or comments or anything like that, it'd be really awesome. And looks like we've already got Chris with us all the way there in Norway, where it's actually 2 a.m. I'm surprised that he's actually up. I was talking with him a little bit earlier too. It's really late, but I hope you're getting everything packed for your really fun vacation you've got planned for you coming up here in the next couple of days. Here we're having a kind of a nice wet wintry day here. The rain has just been something else today, so I've been just trying to stay warm inside. So oh, and it looks like we've got Connie with us here. Thanks, Connie, for joining with us. Thanks for getting in the chat box and let me know you're here. And if anybody has any questions or anything like that, shoot them on there into the chat box. And also, if you are here watching on the replay as well too, get down in the comments section below. Let me know you're here. Let me know what you're up to and what you got growing on, or also, what you might be planning on doing here this next year. I mean, right now is that time of year where we're all planning our next year's garden, and hopefully we'll have some things going on, some really cool things going on here in our gardens as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, because there are some things going on with our garden. So as far as what we're going to be planning for next year, let's see. How did my garden do in the freeze? Connie asks. Well, for me, I didn't really have a freeze. Now, there's a little story there. I live on the West Coast, so I'm here in Southern Oregon, and while the rest of the country was getting hit with that extreme weather these last week or so, we got really not that much at all here where we were. I mean, it was actually a warmer Christmas than what we've had over the last couple of years. It was actually almost 60 degrees for us. We have been getting quite a bit of rain around here and all of that, but haven't had any freezes yet. So everything as far as that is going all right in the garden too. So hopefully if you experience the freeze, that it didn't really cause too much trouble for your winter garden, or you're able to get it really protected too. Protecting some of those plants really help them out and keep them going and keep them growing for you if you're doing some winter gardening. And she says, lucky you, I lost almost everything. We had minus 15 degree wind chill. Yeah, that's pretty extreme, and that's going to take care of most plants in your garden for sure. Even some of our cold weather crops, be susceptible to some damage under those types of weather for sure. And it looks like we got Mary Ann with us, joining with us here too as well. Thanks for joining with us. Thanks for getting into the comment section there. Growing lots of tomatoes, carrots, and lettuce right now, but lost my banana flower in the freeze last week here in Central Florida. I was going to say tomatoes. Definitely. That's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw tomatoes. I hadn't got there, but Florida, definitely. Got to be down there. It is that time of year where you can get those sort of things growing. And Joe, also, we've got lots of people joining with us here right now. This is great. Awesome. Joe joining with us there. He says, bummer. Probably on to losing things in the freeze. Yeah, it's really, it is a bummer to be losing things when it comes to some really extreme weather, when we see that sort of stuff too. So again, lucky for me, lucky for where I was. Last year during this time we did have a really crazy freeze and a bunch of snow and ice and all that sort of stuff through Christmas and up into the new year last year for our area. But this year was completely the opposite. It warmed up. Even our overnights were up into the 40s, which is just really unusual for us here. So I would be normally worried about what the implications of that are for later on in the year, because, when we see a warmer winter, that also means that we're probably going to see some real extremes come spring and summer as well too. But we've been getting a lot of rain, which is really awesome. That's really glad to see that. I'm sure a lot of our lakes that have been drying up here over the last couple of years are starting to get are starting to fill up pretty good too as well too. So we'll take as much of the rain as we can get at this time of year so that we can be ready for all of the more extreme heat that we get during our later spring and summertime. Last year was probably a record for us as far as heat in our area. I think we had more over 100-degree days for us here in Southern Oregon than we've ever had. Definitely more than we've had since I've been here for sure, and more than I've seen since I've started gardening and all of that too. So that was one of our bigger challenges this year that I'll talk about as we talk about how our garden did this year, was dealing with some of that extreme heat. And I think, again, we'll go back to tomatoes real quick. That was probably one of the bigger things that I got or want to figure out for this next year if we get growing tomatoes or get growing again those tomatoes in our garden, is to find some more heat tolerant varieties. So maybe if anybody has any suggestion on what they know are some really great heat tolerant varieties of tomatoes, I'd love to get those suggestions. Put those down in the comment section if you're watching on the replay, or put some in the chat box there too. I'm going to take some notes on some of that so I can get you some really good heat tolerant varieties, because I try to grow probably about 10 to a dozen different varieties of tomatoes throughout our garden during the spring and summer and fall time here. But over the last couple of years, again, with this really extreme heat, I've just been choosing different heirlooms and different varieties of tomatoes, and a lot of them are not producing that well throughout the summertime, because as it starts to get, up into the mid 90s towards 100 degrees, and that starts to become repetitive day after day, those tomato plants are not going to hold on to those flowers, and they're dropping the flowers and not getting hardly any production during that time of year. Now, I did have two varieties, one called Big Red Chief, that I grew actually in a bigger, maybe more of a 10-gallon size container, and did extremely well and produced a lot of tomatoes. In fact, that was pretty much most of the tomatoes, other than a variety. I believe that one was it was a dark variety. Oh man, I can't even remember what it is now, but it was one of my dark black varieties, because that was what we did as kind of a tomato theme this year, was grew about 6 or 7 different varieties of dark black type of tomatoes. And one of them actually did really well, produced a lot of tomatoes during that heat, but most every other tomato plant besides a cherry tomato variety that I grow didn't produce hardly at all, dropped most of those flowers. And I had to wait until it cooled down towards the fall before I ended up getting that fall crop of tomatoes that came in. We ended up with plenty of tomatoes for sure, but when I'm growing all these different varieties, I want to be able to test and try out all the different varieties. And that wasn't very successful for us this year because of all of that heat. So let's catch up here. Yeah, rain is definitely bueno, and similar to us down in Los Angeles, Joe, you're not seeing a lot of that, those freezes and all of that too. In fact, Los Angeles, I mean, you guys are really lucky during the winter time to be able to grow a lot of different things. Year-round gardening down there in that area for sure. But like you say, rain is definitely bueno, that's for sure. And I'm really hoping that we continue to keep getting the rain throughout the winter, and lots of it, in order to help make sure that we can kind of, not get too dry, hopefully, this next coming year. But it's probably inevitable when it comes down to it. And let's see, Marianne says we only got down to about 36 for our lows for those 3 days, and back into the 70s today. Well, 70s, that's pretty nice. And let's see here. The 36 is a pretty low temperature, though, too, for your area in Florida there, for sure. So that's, I'm sure a lot of plants were having some issues when it comes to those temperatures, for sure. And then Joe again says he's been getting some good rain so far in the Los Angeles area there, and looking like there's going to be more coming this week. Yeah, for us here, it's just a lot of rain. And I think I saw in the weather report, too, we're still going to be getting a bunch more over this next week or so, too. So hopefully that'll be really good to, like I said, fill up our lakes, get our streams running back to the normal or what they used to be. And we'll see how much of that we can hold on to in our ecosystem as we move into the spring and all of that. But we are just actually at the beginning of winter too. So we still got a couple more months of all of this winter weather and all that before we can start thinking about what to look forward to in the spring and all of that. And Connie says, now I'm ready to start planting seeds. Tomorrow's supposed to be in the 70s and got spring fever. Yeah. I guess that goes back to what I just said, though, too. So hopefully your weather will hold up, and I know the whole feeling of wanting to get and start growing seeds, start getting things planted out into the garden is something every winter I'm really looking more and more forward to as we get closer to spring and all of that, too. So hopefully soon we'll be able to get out there and really get some things growing in the garden. And, we do got, a few things out there. There's, garlic planted out already. So it's kind of tucked in the garden right now and getting ready to, it's probably more in its dormant stage as we're getting in towards the lower temperatures and all of that. And then it'll get growing really good here too in a few weeks. So, and then other than that, there's, a few things out there, not too much, but I'll get to that here in just a little bit. And we'll talk about what's going on with the garden. Let's see here and catch up with climate change. I am now considering zone 10A instead of 10B, Everglades tomato for heat. Oh, that's a good suggestion. I'll write that one down for sure and take a look at that for sure. They're tiny but delicious. Hey, that's all that really counts, right? Delicious. And, let's see. E2 don't get Homestead, which says it's heat tolerant, but they were awful. Texas heat did a number on them. Oh, so that's a variety called Homestead, but they weren't that good too. Again, it's important that they taste good too, right? But that's, again, it's one of those things that you're not going to find out until you give them a try or you give them a shot and all of that too. So it's good to get some, word of mouth from everybody too who have already had the opportunity to grow those too. So you know what to look for and what to set aside and stay away from as well too. And again, really looking to find some really good tasty tomatoes that are going to be heat tolerant this next year, because I want to up my tomato production. I mean, it's one of our favorite things to grow in the garden. I know most gardeners really look forward to being able to grow their tomatoes. And it's a real bummer when they're not producing or they're not given the best opportunity because of the weather and the heat that we have. How to Garden is here. Hello to you. Good to see you all here. And again, thank you all so much for joining with me here today for this live stream. I thought for sure that, it's been a little while since I've been on here and put out a video on the channel. There's some things that are going on that I'm going to talk about here just a little bit too. I haven't been putting out too much content. So I'm trying to take some opportunities here to be able to get with everybody and talk with you, do some live streams so that we can at least know that I'm still around and we still got plans and we're still going to be doing some things for content, especially coming up this next year too. I've got some really fun things planned for this next year. So really looking forward to some of the things that we've got coming up here for our channel. And so I'm hoping that all of you will be following along with us as we get into this next year and to see what we've got going on, which I'll be announcing too. Actually, that's when they will start talking about, and I'll be doing some more live streams coming up in a few weeks too. Towards the middle or end of January, I've got a big announcement for our biggest project that we're going to be doing this year. And I'm really excited about it. This is something I'm really looking forward to, and hoping that everybody jumps on board and shows up with us to experience this new project that we've got going on. I've got some people helping me out getting this put together and all of that, and I'm really excited about it. So I can't wait to be able to tell you all about that as well too. Joe says, may have missed the info, but what temps are my experience? Yeah, what I was talking about there too, as I was asking about heat tolerant tomatoes, is that this last year for us in the Southern Oregon area, we experienced probably our hottest summer yet. We were getting some really a record number, I know for sure, of over 100-degree days that we had here. Plus, there wasn't really much relief in between those 100-degree days, too. We weren't dropping really below 95 degrees very often at all throughout most of the hottest part of our summer. And that actually did start pretty early on for us, too. I mean, we went from really cool, should I plant out my tomatoes and should I put them into the garden yet? Because, are we still going to experience some frost? We went from that to like literally right away hot weather. And so when I was, so as our plants were starting to grow and starting to get to the point where they were ready to produce flowers, the extreme heat started to really hit for us. And so most of our plants and most of our tomato plants were dropping their flowers. In fact, same with a lot of our pepper varieties as well, too. I had a real hard time with several varieties of our peppers because of that extreme heat, too. And, tomatoes and peppers are warm, tolerant plants, but that's just usually up to a certain amount. You start hitting 95 degrees and above, and a lot of these plants are, if it's staying consistent, a lot of these plants are just not really going to be able to hold on to their flowers and their fruit and their early fruits. So yeah, that's my big goal for this next season, is to find some more heat tolerant varieties, some good tasting heat tolerant varieties for this next year that we can grow, so I can really up my production of tomatoes. Again, I'll mention I did have one that I recommend for others to try as well too, because it did really well. Not only did it do really well and produced a lot of tomatoes for us during those hot days of summer, but it did it in a container as well. Not a 5-gallon container like we usually use for most of them. That one I had in probably about an 8 to 10-gallon container. And that's what you're going to want for larger sized tomatoes too. And it gave me some good sized tomatoes out of that container. I've tried growing a lot of different varieties of tomatoes in our 5-gallon wicking buckets. And a lot of those just don't produce very large fruits. Even if you've got a large variety that you're growing, they're going to come out about half as small, because the tomato is really going to want that extra space for its root system. Really, as I found out with this one variety at least, they really only needed those couple of extra gallons, just that little bit of extra space. So really recommend that too. And that was the Big Red Chief variety. Big Red Chief is what it was called. And so I'll be looking to grow that one again for sure this next year. In fact, I'm going to try it in the ground too and see what I get in the ground as opposed to what I get in that container. So that'll be really fun to try out. Yeah. Again, thank you all so much for joining with me here. It's really great to have you here. It's great to have some conversation in the comments and all of that. But I did want to kind of do a little bit of a year in review. That's kind of what everybody does during this time of year, is take a look back at their year before and take a look at some of the things that worked out and maybe didn't work out. In fact, we jumped right in and talked about some of the tomatoes already. Last year, as we got started in our early season, I did work a bit more in the cooler weather, and got a lot of great cool weather stuff growing this last year in our back patio garden area. Each year I try to grow, just a handful of different like lettuces and different cool weather stuff. And my biggest challenge always, every single year, seems to be brassicas still. And we ended up with some really great broccoli, which is one of my favorite things. And I haven't been as successful in growing broccoli. We did end up with lots of really good broccoli this year that we grew out of our 5-gallon wicking buckets in a I don't know what to really call it, but I built this thing up that holds them up, holds about a dozen of those buckets together, and I usually use that for growing different pepper varieties during the warmer season. But I thought, you know what, let's take advantage of that time before we plant the peppers out and get some broccoli in there. So I went and got some broccoli started up, and we planted those into those containers and grew those out before planting out our peppers. And that was really successful, and it was a really great idea, and we got a lot of great broccoli out of that too. So I'm going to really try to repeat that this next year if we get the opportunity to do that, and get them out maybe just a little bit earlier too. But I'm worried more before about them freezing up. But I'll tell you what, those are some pretty tolerant plants, because I planted them out and we had a pretty good freeze probably about a couple of weeks after I had those planted out into those buckets, and those things froze completely solid. I mean, knock on them, hard ice, solid, and those still just kept on going. They just kind of froze for a moment, and as soon as it cooled down, just went right back at growing. So those were really good. Carrots this year, I have a deep elevated raised bed that I grow out of the back patio, and planted out a few different varieties of carrots, and we did get some really good crops of carrots coming out of that as well too. So another really great success. Lettuces, we tried a bunch of different varieties, and I'm really liking right now. Baker Creek has some, and then I think I got some from another company called High Mowing. And I got these, they're like little baby head lettuces, and we grew those out, and just really successful and really tasty lettuce too. And that we can grow a bunch of them and utilize the more smaller heads in some of our smaller containers, and really got those growing really well. So those were another really good success for us. Spinach though, I don't know, I few seasons back, for probably several seasons, I had really good success with lots of different varieties of spinach. But over the last couple of years, I don't know what my problem is, or if it's just the varieties themselves. You just get one day that just warms up a little bit more than usual, and they just bolt right away. So I didn't have much success with the spinach this last year. But I'm going to get out just a little bit earlier on those, hopefully this next year, and get that out there, because it's one of my favorite things in the garden. Actually, is fresh spinach from the garden. I love fresh spinach; it's really good. But yeah, that was kind of some of the things that we got started off with earlier. A bunch of other things, we were doing radishes and turnips and beets, and we did actually have some really good beets that came out, and I really enjoyed them. In fact, getting those young beet greens off of them too, to add into your salads and all of that with the other things that we've got, those were really well, and something that I'm going to again try to repeat for this next season too. So, we saw a lot of really great successes early on in the garden during the late winter time and early springtime when we're growing some of those cool weather things. Um, Kale, too, had a bunch of different varieties of kale that we grew. And yeah, so those were good. And so yeah, that was as far as what we got set up as far as the early part of this last year in the garden, and that was around the time that we were getting started and set up with what ended up probably becoming one of our biggest disasters of the whole year, and that was our involvement with Johnny Appleseed Organic, as they selected us to be um, a part of their contest that they had. It was a national contest. They selected six of us to compete in six different six different categories of their competition, and that was initially really fun. We got off to a really good start. In fact, most everything that we grew was really successful and all of that. But we ran into some complications through our contract and the company themselves. And in the long run, ended up not finishing out the contest. So again, that was probably our biggest disaster of this last year. Even though I did continue to grow some of the things that we were growing. We grew sweet potatoes. It was largest tomato, hottest pepper, and what was it? Largest squash or pumpkin, and then there were a couple of categories that we were going to have people vote on. And for one, I was the most confident with that pepper category. We grew a variety called the Primatali. The Primatali pepper is, I guess, widely known in the pepper growing community as probably being one of the hottest peppers that are out there right now. So we grew that out to enter into the competition. I was really confident in that one. And then our tomato that we grew, the tomato I got, I think was almost 3 pounds, that tomato. And that one would have won that category for sure. The sweet potato, I think probably would have got us around second place. And then the largest squash, I know for sure we would have done well in that category. But when the competition ended, I didn't really want to continue putting the work into trying to grow the plant out that I had, or at least the most successful out of the 3 plants that I grew out. I got seeds from one of my friends who's a competition grower. In fact, she's setting world records on her master gardening and her large squashes. She grows long gourds and all sorts of different things, and is a really great competitor. But she sent me seeds from one of her largest squashes that she grew, and we got 3 decent plants out of the seeds, and then ultimately came down to 1 plant that was going to be my main plant. And again, when the contest ended, I didn't want to really put the effort into working on that, and ultimately I let that plant go and didn't really do much with it at all. But I think the largest squash that was grown in that category by the other competitors was around 77 pounds, I think. And I probably could have just gotten away with growing the Dill Atlantic, which I did, Dill Atlantic pumpkin, which I grew the year before. And we ended up with a 137-pound pumpkin, which was my second pumpkin off of the vine, because the first one ended up, something happened to it. I think the vine where it attached to the main vine broke off or snapped or something like that, and so we had to let that one go, and then we put all of the effort into the secondary pumpkin there. So I'm sure that first one probably would have been well over 137 pounds. That's what we got from that one the previous year. So again, I'm pretty confident that we would have had a really great shot at winning that contest altogether. But it is what it is. Things happened, and ultimately in that situation, what ended up happening was I got caught up with a pretty extreme COVID infection, or exposure, and I had a COVID situation that, it was not fun. It really put me out, knocked me out for several weeks, and during that time wasn't really able to produce the content that they were wanting and expecting. And so at that point, they ended up letting us go from the contest, which was really unfortunate. Really was not really happy to see that happen. Ultimately, I mean, that ultimate prize was $50,000, so it really kind of sucked to be taken out of the running for that. But I'm confident we would have done really well in that competition. But again, ultimately, congratulations to the winner of that contest. Which I can't remember which one ultimately did win, but it's really really great to see that they had won that contest. Let's see here. We got Bren with us. Happy New Year. It's going to be great growing in the 2023 year. Absolutely, Bren. Great. Thanks for joining with us here. Thanks for jumping in with that comment there, and Happy New Year to you. And yes, I'm really excited about some of the things that we've got coming up for 2023. It's going to be a really great year, I'm sure, even though there are already some challenges that I'm facing when it comes to my home garden that I've got here as well. In fact, that's probably one of the biggest, and I'll just kind of get into this now, I guess, is that that's one of the bigger reasons why I haven't been putting up too much content over the last couple of months. I think one of the last things we did was our Halloween night special, where we watched Little Shop of Horrors together, the old 1960s version, and then even we watched a theater version of it, one of my favorite theater versions of the Little Shop of Horrors that's on YouTube. But that's one of our fun things that I've gotten to do over the last couple of years is on Halloween night, is hang out with everybody on a fun live stream while we're handing out candy to all the kids and all that sort of stuff. But that was the last thing I think we put out, and I was planning on putting some more content or more videos together just after that, but it was literally just a couple of days after we did that live stream that I got got a notice from the owners of the place. In fact, the actual owner of the place that I rent from, because I rent the place that I have, and so all of my garden spaces here in a rental property, and off of our alleyways and all of that sort of stuff. But what ended up happening was the owner of this place passed away a couple months back. And so the family who's basically inherited this property has decided to put this place up for sale. Now, what I live in is actually a kind of a duplex house. So, there's two different units here side by side. And I've lived here now for about 11 years. This February would be 11 years that I've lived here. Really great. I really like it here. And as a lot of people see and watch my videos and see the gardening that we do in the space, we get to do quite a bit of cool, small space urban gardening in a lot of different types of situations too, from the back patio that we have to the rooftop of our carport when we've gotten to garden up there, to some in-ground spaces that we've got around some of the property, just kind of around the house itself. And then as well, I live on a couple of different alleyways that kind of come together in a T, and we utilize those spaces along the alleyways, along the house this way, and then along the back of the property on the other side as well too. So we get a lot of those really cool, unique types of spaces to be able to grow in and grow all the different things that we grow in our garden. And I really do enjoy all of that. And I'm hoping that because this is more of an investment property and not just a regular house that's being up for sale, that the people who buy this place will ultimately allow me to continue to rent here and to continue to stay here. But there is that possibility that they'll want to do something else with the property. Again, I've been here for 11 years. I think my biggest worry in this whole situation is that I've been here long term, and so my rent that I pay isn't as much as what the market is. And that's probably the biggest worry I've got, is that if they purchase the place and then want to upgrade and do some things, have me move out, maybe remodel, do some of those sort of things, and then bring it up to a higher market value for their rental property. I mean, that's probably the biggest worry I have in it. But, again, keep my fingers crossed that we'll get to continue to grow and to continue to stay here. So most of the garden stuff that I've been wanting to do or would be doing during this time of year, I've kind of been on hold with. And I'm not too sure exactly whether or not I should apply and put a lot of that energy into putting together our normal gardens or our early gardens that we get started during, again, the late winter time, the early springtime, and because whether or not they're actually going to sell or I'm actually going to be able to stay here as well too. So, but, we do have some pretty cool realtors working on this property who I've got to talk to and have discussions with. They all really love the garden spaces and really like all the things that I've got growing here. We've had a few potential buyers who haven't actually put any offers out for the place, who've come through and looked at it. Most everybody has already really liked some of the things that we've got going on out here too. So hopefully person who does bid on this place will really like what I've got going on and what we've got growing on here in our gardens, and will allow us to continue to stay and to continue to garden here. And then we can just really, really go at it too. So that's kind of where I'm at. We're kind of like in this little, not necessarily a hiatus, but, kind of just a middle ground of what to do next because of the uncertainty of whether or not this is something we're going to be able to continue to do. Now, I am working on and thinking about some alternate gardening plans for when it comes to the possibility that we won't be able to garden here, that we'll be able to do some things with the channel and continue to produce content when it comes to gardening ourselves here. That's going to be one of the bigger things that I'm going to also try to focus on too, because one of the things I really enjoy with doing this channel is to be able to go and visit other gardeners, to be able to go and visit other organizations and different things that do some really cool things in the gardening world, and be able to do some great videos on what they're doing and what they got growing on, and some cool interviews and all that sort of stuff. And those are some things that we've gotten to do over the last few years. And really, if it comes down to us not necessarily be able to put out as much content because of our home garden, I'm really going to put a lot more energy into those sort of videos and that sort of content as well. So I hope people will really enjoy that when it comes out to it, because I've got some really cool new people to go and visit that we're working on doing some visit videos, and also some of the people we've already seen, and we'll be able to go and catch up with some of them and see how they're growing in the 2023 year as well too. So those are sort of the things that are kind of going on with that. And I'd rather be in a position where I'm really planning out these gardens and planning what we're doing. And I'm still, like I said, kind of got things in mind, and I'm still trying to think about what we could possibly be doing. But again, I'm just not too sure exactly how much energy I'm going to actually put into implementing any sort of plans that I start making for this next season. So that'll be kind of the question. We'll plan out things, I think, as normal, and then just kind of worry about whether or not we're going to implement those plans, when it comes time, based on what's going to be happening with the property here. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on. I don't like being in a position of uncertainty. It's something I'm definitely not used to. As I said, I've lived here for 11 years now, and really enjoy the spaces that we have here. We've been able to put out some really great content for our videos here on the channel. In fact, it's because of these spaces, because of these different unique urban small space type situations that we have, that really inspired me to get started on YouTube and to put this whole channel together. So hopefully, again, we'll get to continue to do that sort of stuff into this next year. All right. And again, I think we're already about 40 minutes into this live stream. Not too sure. Again, I have to say, I'm not too sure. And just in case it happens, my battery was only about halfway. It was the one thing I really didn't think too much about until it came to right before we were getting started with the live stream here about charging up our battery. So we'll see if this battery lasts here for just a little bit longer. And again, if you're all here, make sure that you hit that like button, like our video there, and hit or get into the chat box and join our chat there. Ask any sort of questions, leave some comments if you like. And yeah, I'd love to hear from all of you there. I'm really glad to see so many of you joining with me here today. Oh, I wish the best for you, whatever happens. It's frustrating to be in that place. Yeah, it definitely is. I haven't had this level of uncertainty for quite a while. So actually, before I moved here to this place, I probably moved into a new place maybe almost once a year, once every other year for most of my adult life, actually. I was constantly moving to new places and doing things. But when I got here, I just really kind of settled down and really liked this place. And so, yeah, again, hopefully we'll be able to keep on growing here and keep on doing things. But like I said, we're going to keep doing things and keep moving forward when it comes to our channel. We're going to find ways to produce new content for everybody and keep all of this stuff going, because I have to, like I said, one of my favorite things besides actually doing the gardening here that I get to do and growing things myself, that's probably, the best thing at it, when it comes to gardening, is what we get out of it for ourselves, and I really enjoy gardening, obviously. But the secondary thing was starting this channel and then getting the opportunity to take our camera to other people's gardens and see their different experiences and be able to talk with them about their gardening adventures and all of that sort of stuff too. So that's probably the next best thing I really, really enjoy. So we're going to really focus and push a lot onto that this next year. And hopefully, get to end the year too, because one of the things that found out too this a couple of months back is that the Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company is finally going to have their National Heirloom Exposition this next year in 2023. So that's what we'll get to end our season with again. Like we did in our first few years of this channel, it's getting to go to the National Heirloom Exposition, which is probably one of the most fun you can have if you're a gardener. If you're going to one of these sort of festivals and this exposition that Baker Creek puts on in California, it's been, I think, since they started it about 10, 12 years ago. The Heirloom Exposition was held in Santa Rosa, there in California, in Northern California. But this next year, they're actually going to be taking it down to Ventura County, just outside of Los Angeles County, there in Los Angeles this next year. So that's going to be really cool. I really like the Northern California area there. There's a lot of great things and a lot of cool gardening things going on in that area. But I have so much fun when I get to go visit Los Angeles. There's so much cool urban gardening, small space gardening projects, organizations, gardeners, all that sort of stuff around the city of Los Angeles. And in fact, I did a consultation for Baker Creek a couple of months back as they're planning this next exposition out down there, and talking to them about some of the things that they could be thinking about and different organizations and people down in Los Angeles that they could be inviting in to do speakers and to do exhibits and that sort of thing as well too. So that was really great to get to be able to talk with them one-on-one and help them with some ideas in their planning for this next exposition. Again, probably one of the most fun things that we get to do here on this channel is go to that awesome expedition. And so looking forward to doing that. And then this next year too I'm going to be putting together one of my biggest projects I've done yet for this channel. In fact, I'm still trying to decide whether or not it's going to be something that will remain on this channel, or if it's something that we're actually going to put onto its own channel and start up a secondary channel for us. This is a project I've been wanting to get started up for a couple of years now, but because of different things that have come up, in fact, I was going to get this really started up this last year, but because of the Johnny Appleseed Organics Invitational competition, when that came up and I got accepted for that, I decided to put that on the back burner until this year in order to do and focus on that there. But we'll finally get to work on that project, and I'm kind of being vague about it right now because we're still working on a bunch of things, and we'll be having a big announcement for that coming up here in a few weeks in January. So keep an eye out for that on our channel. It's going to be a big announcement, and from that point, we'll be doing a lot of I'm going to do a couple of different live streams and do some different content things and videos and all of that to help promote this new project. In fact, I'm even thinking about doing a really long form live stream coming up where, I'm not sure how long or how long form it'll be. And what we'll do is have a bunch of different friends and guests and people to join with us on that live stream and to help promote and get the word out there about this new project. It's going to be really fun. And hopefully everything's going to come together in time for us to get it started up here early on in this 2023 year. And it's something that will go through the whole year, and we'll have lots of different things to go along with that as well too. It's going to be really great. I really hope that you keep your eye out for that announcement coming up. I'm going to be really excited about sharing that with all of you out there as well too. All right, let's see here. All right, and kind of in our year in review, so I talked about a little bit there about some of the things that were going on early with the garden, and then we actually kind of started in the middle there as well too, but I'll kind of expand on that a little bit. I had a lot of great fun successes in the garden. I think this was probably one of our better years ultimately that we had, even though there was all the trouble with the competition and those issues there. When it came to production out of my garden this last year, we had probably our most productive garden we've had since I started gardening in these spaces. So that was probably one of the best things coming out of this year. It was my goal too at the beginning of this last year, was to try to really up my production, really kind of break things down into what I'm going to be using the most, which is a great thing. I like growing a lot of different things. I like trying new things. There's always something new growing in the garden, or new varieties of different things that we grow. But it was kind of my goal was to kind of center in on certain things that I know that I can do and that I know are successful in the garden from years past, and really up the production of food that I'm getting out of this small space garden. And that was something that we were successful with, at least moderately successful with for this last year, more so than we have in previous years. But again, if we do get to continue growing and gardening here, that's really something kind of going along with what I was talking about with the tomatoes earlier, is finding more of these varieties that I know will work in these different conditions, and really, again, try to really push that production so that I'm getting the most out of my garden that I can possibly get. That's one of the things. It's fun to grow the garden, and I enjoy it whether or not I actually be getting things, which has happened in years past. I've grown a lot of things that haven't produced very well at all, but just the enjoyment of gardening, supersedes a lot of that sort of stuff. But once you start getting to a certain point in gardening, and you're really finding that you're capable, and you've got the right things set up and the right types of things that you've learned over previous seasons and all of that, then it's time, I really think, for people to really start working and focusing on that production. As I really worked on this last year for us, and ended up with a really productive garden this last year. So I was really happy about that when it came down to the end of the season. Um, Again, barring the tomato issue. Peppers did give me a little bit of trouble through some of the heat. We still ended up with great production out of our peppers, got a lot of great peppers. Melons, something I haven't necessarily succeeded at in previous years. I did have one good year where I had some good watermelon growing out of the back alleyway, but that was kind of one of the more issues of growing in an alleyway that's more of a public space. Was I grew a really nice big watermelon, and I just couldn't keep it hidden enough from everybody who passes through. So someone ended up snatching that one up from me a few years back. My one best melon that I've gotten out of the garden. But this last year we ended up getting several really good watermelons from our watermelons. We had a couple of different varieties that we were growing, but we got several good ones, which was more than I've ever gotten out of watermelon. And I've never really produced any sort of cantaloupe before. And we got bunches of really good, delicious cantaloupe out of the garden this last year. So that was a really good success as well, too. Built off of years of trying and not succeeding and trying and not succeeding with certain things when it comes to that. And then, probably a lot of it is just some of the conditions or the areas that we've grown. I've tried different things when it comes to growing them, whether it's utilizing those 5-gallon buckets to actually in-ground growing and all of that. But this last year we were able to succeed at that. That was really great. And our container trees this year really got lots of great fruit off of our container trees. We've got the first container tree that I got about 3 seasons ago. I think this will be its 4th season in our garden, was our peach tree. I got a frost peach tree that we grow in it's probably about a 7 to 8 gallon container that we moved it up into about the season before last. And this last year, just really produced a ton of peaches. We had peaches all over that tree, which was really a surprise because the year before, I only got 1 peach. 1 peach out of the whole tree the year before. So I was hoping for just, give me 5 or 6 this year and I'd be happy. But we ended up with dozens of peaches coming off of that tree. So it was super successful. We've got 3 different varieties of apples that we've got growing in different containers as well. Those I think I've gotten more. Well, there are a couple in about a 7-gallon containers, and then one I've gotten in about a 10-gallon container, and all of them produce some pretty good apples. The fallback on that is that they ended up getting pest damage to them. I lost most of my apples through pest damage, but I mark it up as a success as far as the fact that we were actually able to get them to produce plenty of fruit off of those trees. Now, the one tree that didn't really produce anything for us at all this last year, but it was really only in its first year of growing, was our pear tree. This last year, we introduced a pear tree where we got it the year before at the end of the year. So we had just transplanted it, gotten it into a larger size pot the year before. This last year, we just worked on pruning it so I could get it shaped out the way I wanted it to grow. So I wasn't ultimately really expecting anything off of it, but hopefully this next year we're actually going to see some pears growing off of that tree, because it's got to be one of the, if I'm getting good success off of the peaches and the apples here in those containers, this area in Southern Oregon is known for its pears. So lots of pear orchards and all of that around the area too. So I'm hoping that that's what's going to be really successful this next year. Again, if I just get a handful, I'll be happy and I'll mark that up as a success. But if it ends up being something similar to the peaches, then, awesome. Really looking forward to seeing how well those container trees do. And those will be going with us no matter where we end up ultimately too. So we'll get to see what happens with them. Marianne says, lucky, never been able to grow watermelons. Going to try again this year. Also going to try Seminole pumpkin again. All vines and male flowers and no female blossoms at all. Yeah, those that similar. I mean, that's exactly the sort of situation that used to come up with me almost every year. I tried to grow the watermelon. Other than that one plant I grew that produced that one fruit, my one fruit, like I mentioned, that someone ended up snagging. A note on the fact that on the person who took that watermelon, they took that watermelon way too early, so they ended up. I mean, if they were thinking that they were going to get some delicious watermelon that they were going to get to eat, then that was a fail on their part because it was not ready to be taken off of that vine yet. So. But real bummer that we ended up losing it because that was like, I mean, I tried, year after year to get them to grow. And, but again, we're going to, work on those successes that we got from this last year in our garden this next year and hopefully be able to continue on those successes and grow some more watermelons and definitely more of those cantaloupes, because the cantaloupe was amazingly delicious. I mean, I love cantaloupe. It's probably one of my favorite melons. And to be able to succeed at growing those in my own garden is the best. I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than to have something really delicious that you grew yourself out of your garden and to be able to enjoy those after all the hard work put into growing them, especially when the hard work is years of working on experience in order to get those outputs finally. Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to think. What were some of the other things that we were growing here? We had several different squash that we grew, which we've been able to grow, and I have never really had a problem growing squash. Throughout the garden. Every time I grow squash, we always get some really good production out of them. I did learn, though, too, a couple of seasons ago, growing zucchini squash. I grew like a couple of different plants, and when it came down to it, you don't need more than just one zucchini squash plant. And that's what I learned from the previous year, and we implemented that this last year. I only grew one, and we ended up with a ton of different vegetables or fruits coming off of those plants. But what do we have? Some butternut that we grew, that we got a bunch of different butternut squashes. In fact, I just enjoyed some of the frozen butternut that we cooked into some butternut soup just a couple of weeks ago. So that was really good, really delicious, really good stuff there. And then again, I didn't really grow any pumpkin because of growing the squash that we were growing for the competition, but that's a really fun one. We've usually tried to grow the pumpkin right out off along the alleyway there so we can have that nice big fruit to kind of show off in the garden there as people are passing through the gardens and all that sort of stuff. I mean, one of the fun things about being able to grow, besides worrying about people taking things, I don't have too much of a problem with that sort of stuff normally, but we are a very public kind of garden because of growing on the alleyways here, and the back space is kind of open to people who can pass by and see everything that's growing. Again, one of the big reasons why we started doing this channel was because I get a lot of people passing through here years ago who would see the sort of stuff I was working on and the different gardening projects that I was working on, and would encourage me to be sharing those and to do things like, and had a few people who actually suggested to me that, hey, you should make a YouTube channel or that sort of thing in order to share the sort of things that we were growing in our gardens, especially the rooftop pepper garden that we grew on top of our carport. So hopefully, again, too, with a new owner, and if we get a new owner here who's really enjoys and likes what we're growing on the garden in the garden spaces that we have, we might get a chance to get back up onto our carport rooftop and be able to grow some things up there again too, because that was one of the problems we ran into with this place here. It actually took them about 4 years before they actually got in and told me that I had to take everything down, which was a real bummer. But again, that might be something that could be a positive out of all of this if it comes down to finding the right owner for this property. So that's something maybe we could look forward to again, because I'd love to be able to get the pepper garden back up on the rooftop again too. It's a really great opportunity. If you've got a well-built flat top roof or of a carport or that sort of situation, get up there and put some containers up there and grow some things, and take advantage of having things, up there to where you can get better sun exposure, because that's probably one of the bigger drawbacks of the space I've got in my back patio here, is that, it's in between a couple of buildings. So it's really only getting that, those few hours during the middle of the day that it's getting a lot of the sun. I find a lot of things that really work and are really successful in that situation. But if you do have an ability to grow up higher, and to get above those walls in order to grab some of that extra sun throughout the day, that's something that really, really helps a garden grow. Connie says, have a happy new year. Yes, exactly. Everybody have a happy new year for sure. It's just coming up here tomorrow night. And again, it's always one of those times a year again. And that's why I wanted to jump on and do a live stream for everybody and put out some content, is to, just kind of share about what's been growing on with our gardens this last year, talk a little bit about some of those things that we found successful and all of that. Just kind of do a little year-end review, as it's the end of the year now, and also be able to look forward to our next growing season. So again, no matter what we're dealing with when it comes to the gardens here and all of that, we're going to continue to move forward and produce some really fun content this next year for everybody. And again, I've got this really cool, fun project that'll be coming up here. We'll have an announcement in a few weeks. So hopefully everybody keeps an eye out for that. We use shade cloth to block the sun in the summertime. Yeah, definitely. There were a couple of things that I did with what I have set up for the pepper garden there. It gets a lot of good sun exposure throughout the whole day. But again, on some of those really extreme hot days, that sun exposure all day long like that can really beat down on some of those plants and really wear them down. And if you get a really good, I use, I think, about a 40% shade cloth is what I have. And I'll just kind of cover that up or put it up as kind of a curtain almost, where I have it set up to just kind of give some shade during some of those really, really hot parts of the summer, because that'll help. And I know it helped with our pepper production. Now, I'd have to get a situation set up when it comes to the tomato plants and all of that too, for each of the individual tomato plants to possibly do some shade cloth of that sort of sense for those two. But something I'll probably work on, with a couple of the different varieties that I really like that, that don't produce too well during the summertime, that I might want to try again. But, we'll see what happens. We'll see what I can get as far as some heat tolerant varieties. So we'll see. We'll see what we get when it comes to that for sure. Mary Ann says she's got a possum in the backyard heading for the chicken coop. Oh, you better get those. Yep. Don't let them get in there. Oh boy, man. I'll tell you what though. I mean, if I have to find another place, or possibly if we end up with a new owner or something like that, I'm going to be finding out that, similar to whether or not the rooftop, I want to find a place where I could possibly get a couple of chickens. I mean, has anybody seen the price of eggs lately when it comes to eggs? Unbelievable. So, it'd be nice to have a few chickens in the back there producing some eggs for us. And And we do have a little space right in the back there that I've always thought about too. If we had the right situation where we could have a couple of different, have just a nice little coop or something like that. And then again, too, being in the alleyway, being able to possibly even, let them kind of free range just a little bit during certain parts of the day or at certain times. And especially like during the, beginning of the season, is to let them get around in a lot of these spaces around the alleyway too, and maybe just, take care of some of the pest issues and maybe eat up some of those bugs. We got lots, and I don't even know if chickens, I'm sure they probably do. I mean, they'll eat most anything anyways when it comes down to it. But earwigs, I mean, I had such an issue with earwigs around my gardens and stuff that I'd hopefully be able to maybe have some chickens run around and maybe kind of decrease some of those populations. And then again, maybe even to set up some sort of pond situation, have a couple of chickens and maybe a duck or two as well too, and get some ducks to eat some of these slugs and snails that we get around here as well too. So those are really some things I would love to have. I want to have some of those sort of things. So hopefully, if I have to find another place, then we get a place in a situation where we could possibly do that, as well as maybe get an owner here that would be open-minded to the idea of being able to add those and have those back there. And as long as as long as we take care of them right, I don't see why it couldn't be something that we could do. That and a beehive. I really want a beehive as well too. So I'd love to be able to do that. We got Duke's Yard Homestead with us here. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. It says chickens are a great addition. Check your ordinances to see how many you're allowed. It was a fun process, challenging our town ordinance to allow for hens, and we love our girls. Yes, yeah, that's something I've definitely looked at around here too. I do believe we're allowed. I mean, I think we're allowed around 6 or 8, I think is what it is for backyard chicken keeping here, but we're not allowed any roosters. Nobody wants any roosters around their neighborhood. So that's the one thing we definitely can't have. But I know we do have, there's several houses around where I live that already have chickens. In fact, one house just down about 3 or 4 blocks from me, just down the way, they pretty much have chickens that they run all over the place. And you see them, all over the place. So I don't think that's really a part of the rules as well, too, is letting them kind of free run around all over the place. But I do see some chickens that the neighbors have got running around. But who knows? You get some and you got them penned off, and if you can kind of oversee them and watch them and keep an eye on where they're going, what they're doing, and this kind of alleyway situation that I have, I could probably let them get out there and get going and be able to peck around and get to some of those pests and try to decrease some of those populations of that sort of thing at the time. Mary says she chased off the possum. She says we have 3 girls and I just love them. They help me garden in the afternoons. Mainly they just dig holes and have fun. Yeah, exactly. Me, like I was saying though too, is I definitely like to have a few hens to where I could just get some eggs from them, because I'm telling you, I haven't bought eggs for a while because they're just cost so much, Connie says, sounds like fun, Mary. I would love to have some chickens, but I think our dogs would kill them. Yeah, that would be kind of an issue in some sense too, if you got dogs running around and if they might be doing that. I had, when I was a teenager, I lived up in Alaska, and I had this, he was kind of a half Cocker Spaniel, half Labrador. I mean, weird mix, but just the cutest little dog you ever seen. And his name was Dusty. And we lived way out in the country, out in Alaska. But this dog would take off and he'd go for miles away, and come to find out from my grandmother, who got a call about finding my dog up in their yard chasing and killing their chickens. And that was his big problem and every time he would get off, we ended up having to leash him and all of that, because that's what he would do. He would take off and I mean, this property was several miles away. Not, several, I would say like 3 or 4 miles. And he would literally take off and go all the way that distance just to go to this person's place and to harass their chickens on several different occasions. And it got to the point where this this person who owned this property and those chickens had told my grandmother if the dog showed up anymore or killed any more of his chickens, he was going to do my dog in. And at that point is when we decided, if he's going to be outdoors, he had to be on a leash of some sort. And that didn't make him happy at all. But, I just couldn't take the risk of losing him to somebody who was going to, protect their chickens. Ultimately, he had the right to protect his chickens. And that's what, it came down to. I wouldn't want any dogs coming racing and chasing into my situation and killing my chickens either if I had them. And one of the things too, though, as well, here in town where I live, we do have leash laws. So people are required to have their dogs on leash, but that doesn't stop the stray from running through or anything like that and causing some sort of problems in that situation. But hopefully we'd have a situation where they're, mostly penned up, but, allowed to come out, with supervision, throughout, the day or something. Which would be really cool. I just want chickens. I've never had to have chickens, and just something I've really, for several years now, I've really wanted to have chickens. Okay, let's see. We're at this for a little over an hour here. Sure, if anybody has any questions or anything like that they want to jump in with here over the next minute or two. Other than that, we might just start closing out our live stream here real soon. Still got lots of work I got to do to finish up some things that we need to do for our upcoming project that I was kind of teasing here just a little bit ago, and put together some things that I'm trying to get done, and have and talk with some people too that I'm trying to organize with and get set up to help make sure that this project is the best it can be. So I've got a lot of things that I've got to get done over the next few weeks for us to be able to launch this project when it's time. All right, and Connie says, good night, everyone. Good night, Connie. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, everybody else, for joining with us, too, and getting in the chat box there and helping make this a fun conversation today. I really do enjoy getting together with everybody on this channel and having these live streams. And like I said, we're going to do more of them coming up here real soon in the next few weeks, as we're going to be moving towards an announcement of that project. And then hopefully we're going to have a nice, real fun, maybe even a couple of them. I'm not too sure. We're still kind of in the planning phase of what we're going to do when it comes to promoting this new project and getting people to come and tune in for it. But yeah, I want to do a couple of different kind of long form live streams where we'll have a few different people join with us, and talk with us and discuss with us different things about the upcoming gardening season, as well as helping promote and get the word out about our new project that we've got coming up. Let's see, Marianne says, I have a cat that comes outside with me and the chickens can hold their own. They puff up and put the cat in his place. Love getting fresh eggs. Yes. Yes, the eggs I'm definitely looking forward to. And I do have cats. That would be probably the biggest thing that I would be concerned about, in a sense, because my cats, they are like indoor, outdoor cats in a sense. But again, I'm pretty sure that I know for sure George is not going to be wanting to mess with. That dude's a little chicken of his own, so I don't think he's going to be messing with any chickens. But when it comes to Dexter, he might be the one that we might have more issue with. But again, if chickens can the chickens can hold their own, or they can be, caged off for the most part, and then I can be out and supervise any sort of allowing them to run around or anything like that. Then I can kind of keep an eye on that and help protect them from any sort of situation that they would deal with when it comes to the cat or any other cats, because there's several of them all around here too. It's one of the reasons why I do have cats ultimately, is because, if I didn't have my own cats, I would have strays and all that sort of stuff that come through this alleyway. We just went through the stray dog issue here. Predator proofing is a must. I'm making changes to help with that too. I was concerned about cats until the chickens swarmed the cat one day. LOL. Yeah, which is good to hear, because that, like I said, that would be my biggest concern, is the cats. But if the chickens can really kind of stand up for themselves in that situation, then I'm sure my cats are not going to want to mess around with them either too. With a chicken, Chris. Hey, it's Chris. Good to see you. I hope all of your chickens are doing good down there in Mexico. It's good to see you here. Check something here as well. All right. Yep. But yeah, that would be kind of fun. And again, hopefully that the situation works out for us here, that we can possibly do something like that and be able to, expand our gardening experience into kind of a small scale homesteading experience, in a sense, by having our own animals. Like I said, I would also, if I could have some chickens, I would definitely be trying to also maybe get myself a duck or two as well, because in fact, a friend of mine just drove me by one of my neighbors that actually lives about 4 or 5 blocks up to the north of me here. And they actually have a couple of kiddie pool situations and a whole front yard situation where they have about 3 or 4 different ducks that they have there of their own too. So that would be fun as well too. Love to have some ducks around. Not too sure. I mean, I haven't had duck eggs before as well, so I'm not too sure about that. But that would be an interesting thing about having ducks. It's possibly getting duck eggs too. Chris says, I have too many chickens. About 80 chickens. Oh, that's a lot. Need to thin the flock. That is quite a bit of chickens, but I don't know. It'd be pretty fun, I think, though, too. I mean, I haven't had any chickens. I did have some experience with chickens as I helped a lady up in Alaska when I lived up there take care of some of her chickens too. And Chris said, duck poop is a little too nasty. That's why I got rid of them. Yeah, that would be, that would be kind of the more difficult thing to deal with. But if I could get the right type of pen situation or something like that, maybe some of that would make some pretty good fertilizer addition to some of our compost piles and all of that. And ultimately be a good resource to be implemented back into our garden spaces. So, but yeah, I've gone to many different parks and ponds and all of that throughout my life, where they've got ducks. And that is one of the worst situations about those areas is their duck poop laying around everywhere. It is pretty nasty. That is for sure. But again, I think it would be really kind of fun to be able, if you could work it and you could set it up right in in the small scale situation, with just maybe, 1 or 2 of them or something like that, I think would be kind of cool. And then again, ultimately, I would love to be able to just feed these ducks and maybe even have them run around, and, basically roll out some of our rocks and different things that we have around the alleyway where a lot of these slugs and snails and things get, and hide out in, during the daytime and all of that, and just kind of maybe like open them up for these ducks to get in there and just have a feast on some of those things around the garden, because those things are just one of the bigger pests that I've got around here, and they're they're in the big numbers of them, as well as, like I said, those earwigs, which I'm still trying to figure out how I can cut those numbers down on those things too, because they are probably one of the biggest damagers of my garden. Marion says, my coop is like Fort Knox after losing chickens to raccoons. Yeah, that's something that we do. And we got a whole family of them that love to walk through here every now and then. And it's really interesting to see, sometimes they kind of battle with the cats a couple of times, but then a few times I've seen them actually just kind of hang out with my cats. I caught the cats, just kind of playing around and laying around out in the front yard about 2 seasons ago with 3 or 4 different raccoons, just kind of hanging out, a couple up in the tree, and then a couple of them just right there on ground level with the cats too. So that kind of surprised me. I thought they would really, really clash. But I did have one situation where they kind of got nose to nose and kind of did some hissing at each other. But that was the most that ever came out of that situation with the raccoons. But I would definitely worry about raccoons if I had chickens in that whole situation too, because we've got a whole family of them that come through here several times throughout the year. In fact, one time, I remember the raccoons came out, or I came outside not knowing that they were there, and so they were walking through the alleyway, and when I came out the door and kind of surprised them, it split them up, and there was like 1 or 2 of them that ran up over into my front yard, up into my tree, and then there was about 5 or 6 of them that went the other way, because I just kind of, I didn't even know they were there, and just kind of busted their whole situation walking through the alleyway there. And it was really interesting to see how the younger raccoons that were in the front there that ran up into the front yard and kind of got up into the tree, the other ones took off the other direction and came all the way around the block in order to come back and get those other 2 raccoons and all that sort of stuff. And it was kind of interesting to see how they work together and hang out together as a pack or a family and all of that. But they did not like the fact that I came out there and broke up their whole family situation that they've got. Yeah. But yeah. Well, let's see here. And we're heading close to about an hour and a half now, and I think that I'm going to close up shop here in just a couple of minutes. And like I said, I got to get back to doing some work here to get some of these other things going and working on some of the plans that we've got for this next year. So, I'm really glad that all of you took the time out of your day to stop by and check out what we've got going on here this last year in our year review live stream, and some of the things that we're talking about getting going on this next year, hopefully, if everything works out right. So hopefully, we won't have too much uncertainty when it comes to the garden coming up soon, and I can start implementing some plans for this next season. So definitely. And Duke says, looking forward to seeing the new plans. Yes, definitely. Keep an eye out for some big announcements we've got coming up here in a few weeks. And again, like I said, I want to do some more live streams with everybody and set up a couple of really cool, fun, long form live streams where we can get together and just hang out for a few hours, over a few weeks before we get launched with this new project coming up. I'm really excited about it. I hate to be so vague about it right now, but we're working on some things, and as soon as they all come together, we're going to be ready to announce and get this whole thing started up here real soon. So again, I hope you all keep tuned in, follow along with us here on the Urban Gardener, and see what we've got growing on for 2023 coming up here, because no matter what happens right here on this channel, we're going to make sure that we're going to bring you some really great fun content that we usually put out here on our channel, whether it's going and visiting people, gardening, maybe even possibly, the one thing I didn't actually mention too was, if any possibility with the situation doesn't work out with our garden here too, I'll probably work on possibly starting back up our community gardening plots that we were growing in our first couple of years that we had the channel. So that'll be a possibility for what we'll be doing in this next year too. Some more community gardening and all of that as well too. So we're going to keep on growing here on the Urban Gardener, and I hope you all keep on growing in your gardens. I want to thank you again for joining with me and getting in the chat there and making this a really fun discussion. And again, we'll see you all in the new year. You all take care. Thank you much.